On the behalf of Dr. Vittal Rao Vike Patil Medical College and Hospital and Research Cell, I am welcoming all of you. Today, we are organizing webinar on clinical trials planning, conduct and governance, and it will be delivered by eminent speaker Deepti Goyal. She is Executive Director, Harrison's Technical Consultant, a GCP consulting unit. She has done her M.Pharm. She has done her M.Pharm and she has vast 19 years of the experience in clinical research, site management, project management. She has done clinical trials in dermatology, oncology, and without wasting much more time, I am requesting Deepti Goyal Madam to deliver her knowledgeable lecture on the clinical trial planning, conduct and governance. Madam, I have made you host. Please start.
Thank you. A warm welcome and thank you, Dr. Kadu, for having me today. I thank the whole management for organizing this webinar. My name is Deepti, as Dr. Kadu mentioned, and I am here to talk about clinical trials, planning, conduct, and governance. I hope you can see the screen well. Dr. Kadu, is my screen visible?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we are all hearing clinical trials these days, and we are all breathing in and breathing out the word clinical trials these days. And that's because of the situation, pandemic situation we are in. It is important for us to know that clinical research is an important, rather imminent piece in the whole phase of drug development. What is the difference between research and clinical practice? Any activity qualifies as research if it is designated to produce knowledge, results, and it is done in a systematic way and with the intent to publish results. Any research, any clinical activity done in a systematic way will be qualified as a research, provided it has some results which come out as an output, and then there is an intent to publish the data also. Clinical trials are studies done in human beings to evaluate potential medical treatments, drugs and devices, diagnostic agents or technique. It is necessary to conduct clinical trials to find new, more effective and safer drugs and therapies. It is mandatory step to perform clinical trials as per drug regulations. In the absence of such mechanism, every patient treatment is a hit and trial. Like we all know in the COVID situation, how initially when the trial had not started, the doctors were treating COVID patients, but they were doing a hit and trial method. Unless government said, WHO said that we must conduct clinical trials in form of solidarity or plasma trials or vaccine trials or repurposed drug trials to be able to come out with the structured results. It is an organized research on human beings intended to provide adequate information. The key for any clinical research outcome is safety and efficacy. We need safety and efficacy data. We cannot generalize our results based on published literature. We must do the proof of concept studies to be able to decipher the safety and the efficacy part. It is also referred to as clinical trial management. When do we need clinical trials? Do we need clinical trials when the drug is already available in the market? The answer is no. Do we need clinical trials when a similar drug of similar nature with a similar formulation is available? The answer is no. We need when the drug is new in nature. In my next slide, I will explain what is new drug. We need trials when the drug is new, when the vaccines are again not tested before, for new uses of existing drugs. Now we all know about remdesivir, tocilizumab. All these are existing products in the market which are being repurposed for the use of in COVID. Medical devices and new drug delivery systems. All of these in different situations need clinical trials. As I mentioned before, we do trials so that we get evidence to provide the efficacy and safety in human beings. Only a well-designed clinical study can give us these answers. We have different type of protocols which we have seen, and in my experience of about 19 years in this industry, we have seen poorly designed protocols, we have seen well-designed protocols. Remember one thing, friends, if the protocol is poorly designed, it will reflect on your results. Look at these examples. We have to have an organized study to be able to come out with a good endpoint in the trial. For example, evaluation of drug X on osteoarthritis. The question asked at the end is, how many patients improved? Approximately 150 to 200. What was the percentage of improvement? 80 to 90%. So random, so abstract. Any dropout? Maybe 10 to 12. Reasons? Maybe they did not get symptomatic relief. Maybe. Look at the accuracy or inaccuracy of data. Any side effects? Gastritis, headache, diarrhea. Now let us see the same situation in an organized manner. How many patients improved? If the criteria of 40% is considered as improvement, 150 on 200 patients showed improvement with a p-value of less than 0.01. The significance, the test of significance. What was the percentage of improvement? These many patients showed improvement from 40 to 50. These many patients from 50 to 60. 10 patients from 60 to 70. Any dropouts? There were 10 dropouts due to the following reasons. 3 gastritis, 4 no improvement, 3 reasons not known. Very specific, accurate results, and anybody to whom this data goes would like to believe this. So all of us have this intention to perform trials in this way. Why India is an irresistible market for clinical trials? We have seen, again, from the year 1999, when I started doing clinical trials till now, we have seen plethora of changes in the regulatory system. And now I can say with conviction, India is the best destination for conducting clinical trials. The way the governance I have seen from the end of DCGI and ethics committees, and the way investigators are so charged up to do trials and to contribute in trials, it is amazing, class apart. It was there before, but it was very abstract, very fused. People did not know their job well, but now governance is hard. Governance is good. That is why everybody is falling into the line. These are the key stakeholders we have in clinical trials. We have sponsor units like CIPLA, we have Zydus Cadila, we have Serum Institute. I'm sure you are AstraZeneca, Oxford University. These are the people who fund, manage a trial. There are investigators and site personnel at the site at, for example, Vikhye Patil Medical College, who will be performing the trial at the site's end. Very important piece, because ultimately you are the one dealing with patients. The data comes from site. There needs to be the accuracy of data coming from site. Monitor is the representative of the sponsor, who will monitor every now and then whether the trial is going on well. IRB-IEC stands for Institutional Review Board and Independent Ethics Committee, situated at the site. Like you have one, all ethics committees have to give the permission before the trial begins. Then you have study subjects. These are the people who are on whom you will test the medication. Then there is a regulatory body, which is called as Drug Controller General of India. A new drug. See this example. This is the definition taken from the Gazette of India, the Clinical Trial Regulatory Gazette of India. Anything, any drug which has not been approved before in the law of the land as safe and efficacious. I do not have any data available in terms of its therapeutic efficacy and safety. Second new drug example is a drug which is approved by licensing authority for a certain claim, but now you want to bring out the same drug in the market for some other indication. Then also it becomes a new drug. Again, it can be either an indication or a route of administration, dosage or dosage form, anything that has gone different from the existing in the market. A fixed dose combination, which individually is approved, but when you are combining it, it is not approved in the market in terms of claims, in terms of route of administration and dosage form. So individually it may be approved, but as a combination, it is not approved in the market by DCGI. So DCGI will request for at least a phase 3 data. You need not do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but at least a phase 3 information is required. A modified or a sustained release form of a drug which is already there in the market, vaccine, recombinant rDNA, and any living modified monoclonal antibodies. All of these classify as the definition of new drug as per the definition given by DCGI. In India, we have the regulatory process, which is very robust, and the body is governed by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It is called CDSCO, CDSCO, Central Drug Standard Control Organization. The head of CDSCO is DCGI, Drug Controller General of India. And then under DCGI, you have state bodies called State Drug Controller Authorities, which are called state FDAs. The new drug approvals are given by DCGI at the CDSCO office, which is situated in New Delhi. There are two processes. I'll take you to this particular slide. There are two applications to be put up at the end of DCGI. One is the IND application and the other is NDA application. IND application stands for Investigational New Drug. IND is after preclinical, when you're moving into the phase 1. From preclinical to phase 1, first time human introduction, you have to seek permission, which is termed as IND, Investigational New Drug. Mark these words. The drug is still under investigation. Then the second stage is when you are moving from phase 3 to the market. After finishing phase 3 to the market, you submit an application which is called New Drug Application, NDA. Now, from phase 1 to phase 2, when a drug moves, does it also require permission from DCGI? The answer is yes. Every change of phase requires permission from regulatory body. These are the two milestones, hence these are called as IND and NDA, and BLA stands for Biologics Licensing Application. B is for the vaccines. For vaccines, it is called as BLA. Like we have regulatory body in the DCGI, we have ethics committee, which is at the end of the side. Every trial which is being conducted in a particular institute has to be permitted by the institutional ethics committee. And these institutional ethics committees are registered by DCGI. You have to have the registration, which is valid for 5 years. Initially, it was 3 years, but now it is 5 years. And you need to also ensure that you are monitoring your clinical trials which you have approved. It is not just one-time approval. You have to continuously monitor or supervise your trials which you have approved in the EC meetings. The new drug development process goes like this. It's a long process which takes about 10 to 12 years from start to finish. The first stage is a lab stage where you have target identification, validation. Then you move to the next stage where you come to the lead. What are the lead molecules, promising lead molecules, which are looking good to be taken to the next level, which is called lead optimization. The target is the protein or a receptor. Lead is the potential molecule. Optimization is that from these 50, at least 5 or 7 are looking promising to be optimized. Then we move to the preclinical stage, which is the animal testing. After preclinical stage, we come to the phase 1, which is a first time human introduction, which is done on healthy volunteers. From phase 1, we move to phase 2, which is done in human beings. Then phase 2 to phase 3, phase 3 to phase 4. The whole drug development process takes a lot of time, and that is why in this COVID situation, I agree the vaccines are being tested and they will get fast track approvals, but believe me, none of the companies can bypass this step. None of the companies can bypass these important steps of drug development. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. Let me take you to phase 1. It is the first time human introduction. You establish the behavior of the potential drug in man. Very cautious approach because you are, giving it to the, drug to the human being for the first time. It is done on healthy volunteers. The minimum sample size you use is 20 to 80. Established drug is safe in man and to collect pharmacokinetic data. Pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics is the key outcome of phase 1 trial. Phase 2 is called therapeutic exploratory. Done in patients, a few hundreds. Efficacy is the primary indication. In a very controlled fashion, you do small sample size, but you are giving it to patients now. So therapeutic exploratory. You are establishing the best dose. Expand the safety profile. The phase 2 is usually defined as phase 2A and phase 2B. Phase 2A are pilot trials and phase 2B are pivotal trials. Pilot is again smaller sample size, cautious approach, selected patient population. Only when phase 2A is looking promising, I will move to the next larger sample size. The phase remains the same, but the sample size expands. Phase 3 is called therapeutic confirmatory because you have established the dose, you have established pivotal comparative efficacy, large scale trials in patients to establish efficacy and safety. You do it in larger sample size, which is 1,000 to 3,000 patients. It is again called as phase 3A, phase 3B. Phase 3A is you complete the study, bring out the interim data, submit the same to DCGI, and you continue doing the phase 2B and keep gathering data on more number of patients on the safety and efficacy. And once the data is complete, only then they will give you the permission to launch. But in this case, in vaccine stage, in COVID situation, when there is an urgency to launch the product, they may give permission on the basis of phase 3A with the caveat that you have to submit the phase 3B also within stipulated time frame. We have phase 4 data, like we have favipiravir, which is available in the market recently by Glenmark. Now, Glenmark has been instructed by DCGI that you submit to us the phase 4 data of favipiravir. So now Glenmark is doing the PMS, post-marketing studies of favipiravir. My key objective is long-term safety. Efficacy is already proven in past trials. Now the objective is safety in masses and classes. These are the different, this is a, tabular what you call comparison between phase 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Phase 1 are the riskiest and the shortest. Phase 2 are moderate risk with medium length. And phase 3 and phase 4 are lowest risk but longest because sample size is larger. These are some of the ethical issues and guidelines. We have ICH GCP E6, which is the guideline standard Bible which we follow in clinical trials. We have ethics committee's SOP, standard operating procedure, which we follow. We have informed consent, which we have to take from the patient every time you ask him to participate in the study. Mandatory. This is GCP. The URL for the website is www.ich.org. Design, conduct, monitoring, termination, and analysis of clinical trial. It is a complete scratch to finish guidance for us to follow the law of the land. If we don't follow GCP, we cannot complete or abide by the DCGI rules. It is a vehicle to follow the law of the land. Informed consent is the written free consent of the subjects to participate in a clinical trial after receiving complete information about the new drug. Very important. We often skip this point. We often skip to tell the patient completely of what he or she is getting into. Very important. If he is illiterate, then you have to call the LAR, legally acceptable representative. We have done this already, regulatory requirements. So recently we have the new clinical trial regulation 2019 which has come into effect in March, and this is a new gazette which has been released. This we have done. These are the ethics committees. As I told you, the registration of ethics committees is mandatory by the Office of DCGI. This is the data that we collected from CTRI, the CDSCO website, CDSCO website. 881 registrations have happened, and for the institutional committees, independent are 220, eligible for re-registration are 641, NABH accredited. Now, another rule which has come is that the ethics committees, even though they are re-registered, they need to be accredited by NABH. This is one step further, basically to endorse the quality or the standardization of ethics committees in our country. So we have about 92 accredited institutional ethics committee, and independent are about 2 in nature, and total 94. This is the NABH accreditation city-wise data: Pune, Bangalore, Mumbai, Kolkata, and Ahmedabad, Thane, Chennai, and Delhi. We are all aware of the, the repurposed drugs which is currently being taken place, the trials which are taking place. I thought, let me have a slide or two on this. The repurposing of COVID drugs, remdesivir, which is already there in the market by Cipla, Hetero, and Gilead. Original claim was Ebola, treatment of Ebola, but now we are claiming it as a treatment, first line treatment, SOC for COVID treatment, mild to moderate cases. Favipiravir, again mild to moderate cases. Tocilizumab for original claim was rheumatoid arthritis, and now we have Actemera from Cipla, which is now repurposed to be used as the add-on therapy in COVID for severe cases. Ivermectin and imatinib, these are again the repurposed drugs. The trials are going on, and some of these are already on the verge of coming into the market. These are the vaccines for COVID, which all of us are very well aware of. We have this Oxford vaccine, which have been taken by AstraZeneca and of Serum Institute of India. It is an CHD adenovirus vaccine. It is the fastest stage right now. Then we have Moderna, which is a mRNA vaccine. It has moved from phase 2 now, from phase 1 to phase 2. And recently, I was reading in the news that it has completed phase 2. Then we have Pfizer and BioNTech. Again, it is in phase 2. We have CanSino Biologics, who has completed phase 2, and we have Sinovac Biotech, which has completed phase 3. We have Zydus Cadila, we have Bharat Biotech. These are the indigenous vaccines which are promised to be in India soon. But of course, they had promised 15th of August, but that's not possible. But it is in phase 2 trial at this stage, and it is the recruitment is taking place on healthy volunteers. Just to summarize, friends, clinical research is an integral part of drug development. Unlike the past, today the process has gained unique position, and with the advent of regulatory requirements and ethical guidelines available globally, designing, conducting, monitoring, and appropriate quality assurance and data management determine the success of clinical research. It is the inevitable piece in the whole drug development, and we cannot bring out the new molecule in the market unless we conduct clinical trials. So you do the trials with the right governance, with the right approach, with the right protocol, and science results are positive results are inevitable. So thank you very much for your patience hearing. If you have any questions, this was short, but I do understand that you may have questions. Please feel free to put up your questions on this email ID, or you can put it via Dr. Kadu, and I will be very glad to answer individually. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, I will be very happy to answer them.
Madam.
Yes, sir.
Ayurvedic drug, and which is approved by the Ayush. if we want to give it to the COVID patient, does it come under a clinical trial?
Yeah, so if the ingredients are available in the market, but as a formulation, it has not been tested in the Indian population, it is necessary that you conduct clinical trial. If the clinical trial has to be conducted, it may not be called as a new drug per se, but you must have trial on some sample size which is statistically significant to be able to arrive at the safety and efficacy.
Okay.
The data from clinical trial is necessary for you to do a proof of concept and give it to masses in classes.
Okay. They are claiming, they are claiming that it is approved by the Ayush. So it
you need not go to DCGI. You need not go to DCGI in that case. It will be approved by Ayush. But even if it is approved by Ayush, you have to check whether similar drug is already has conducted clinical trials. Okay, similar drug. Yes, sir.
Can a medical college ethical committee give approval for this Ayurvedic drug?
You can, provided you should take one co-investigator or a sub-investigator who is an Ayurvedic physician.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. Yeah. Thanks a lot, madam. Now I'm calling Dr. Amrut Swami to give vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kadu, sir. And thank you very much to you, respected Dr. Dipti Goel, madam. It was a very nice session on the basic information of clinical trials, and hope so. If the in the coming times, we as an institute will also be involved with you in conducting many clinical trials together. Let's hope for it. Thank you all the participants for patiently listening to this webinar, and on behalf of Research Cell of Dr. Vittal Rao Vikhe Patil Foundation Medical College and Hospital, I thank Dr. Dipti Goel ma'am. I thank Dr. Sunil Natha Maske, our Dean sir, for guiding us for this webinar. And I thank the respected Dr. Abhijit Dute sir for being a source of inspiration for all of us. Thank you very much, madam, and thanks everyone. Now I conclude that this webinar is over, and if you have any further questions, you can contact madam through the research center. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.